Dexter Resurrection has been out for a little bit now, and I wanted to break down all the episodes that are currently out scene by scene while giving my thoughts on everything as we go. Episode 1 is titled A Beating Heart. At the beginning of the episode, we see Dexter being operated on from his gunshot wound. He starts hallucinating and seeing previous dead characters from the original show. I can see this coming off as cheesy, cringe, or just too much fan service, but I really like it, because every person he hallucinates actually has something important to say to him. We see the Trinity Killer, who tells him to own up to his mistakes. He then sees Miguel, who tells him that trying to be normal is what got his friends killed. Dexter then sees his good old dad, Harry. Dexter confesses to Harry that he has nothing to live for, and the doctor should just let him flatline. Harry tells Dexter that he needs to find Harrison and be his father again. Harry tells Dexter what happened to Brian when he grew up without parents, and he can't allow Harrison to become like that. The final person that Dexter sees is Dokes, and Dexter's immediate reaction is making a sarcastic joke about how seeing too many ghosts. He gets annoyed thinking Dokes is just gonna insult him, but Dokes actually just reinforces exactly what Harry told him, which is that he needs to find Harrison. What Dokes says in this scene kind of reminds me of what Brother Sam tells Dexter in season 6, which is that all it takes is a little bit of light to keep the darkness at bay. And Harrison is that light. I always like that scene. Brother Sam is an underrated side character. Anyways, Dexter wakes up from the coma and the doctor tells him he's been there for 10 weeks and he's going to need to stay another couple weeks in order to fully recover. While all this is going on, we see that Harrison is in New York City, now works at somewhere called the Empire Hotel. We see someone come into his shop with a drunk girl and claims she's his wife. Harrison knows this isn't true because he had met her before. Harrison brings them to his room where he sees more and more red flags and realizes this guy is a sexual predator. He tries to tell himself it's not his problem, but he ends up not being able to help himself and kills the guy in a fight. He uses the knowledge Dexter gave him in New Blood to chop up the body and toss it out with the trash. When it gets to the landfill, it bursts open and a garbage worker finds it and reports it to the police. The police track it back to the hotel and begin their investigation. I know people hate Harrison or whatever, but I didn't think it was all that bad, and I think this is a super interesting direction to take his character. Harrison is well on his way to becoming exactly like Dexter, whether he likes it or not, and I think that's what the audience wants to see. At least I do. We cut back to Dexter and they actually take the time to fix a plot hole. One of the big questions is why did Angela from New Blood drop him off at the ER and then leave instead of arresting him? I guess Angela just kind of forgives him because he turned in Kurt Caldwell, the runaway killer, into the police and everything. It's explained that Angela took her kid and dipped and wanted nothing to do with Dexter anymore, which I feel like is super convenient, but you gotta start fresh somehow, right? I kind of figured they were gonna undo everything from New Blood, so I wasn't surprised. The moment everyone has been waiting for finally comes towards the end of the episode. Angel reunites with Dexter. Angel questions him about why he did what he did and with him leaving Miami and faking his death. Dexter doesn't start getting nervous until Angel tells him that Angela had accused Dexter of being a serial killer, arresting him, and then supposedly shooting him. Because obviously no one knows it was actually Harrison. Angel says that Angela proceeded to backtrack everything she told him, which left him extremely confused. Angel connects the dots, saying that Dokes, LaGuerta, and Angela all said the same things about Dexter and it all accused him of being a killer. And he kind of jokes about how it's a weird coincidence, which just makes Dexter sweat harder. Dexter makes up an excuse to make Angel leave the room. Before he leaves, Angel says that he took it upon himself to legally resurrect Dexter Morgan. And Dexter makes a remark saying,
"Or is it because you can't prosecute a dead man?"
showing that he fully believes Angel's onto him and he needs to get away from him. Dexter hears about the murder at the Empire Hotel on the news and immediately knows it's Harrison, or at least he thinks it is because of the details on the murder. This is pretty much the final straw for Dexter that makes him realize he needs to go to New York City and find Harrison. Dexter creates a distraction, goes into the bathroom, climbs out the window. He steals a car, drives to New York City, where the episode ends with him seeing Harrison outside the Empire Hotel. Overall, a great start to the show and a very interesting beginning to the story. My only complaint is that how they completely undid New Blood besides the plot they're going with Angel, but honestly, I get it. It was necessary in order to start fresh and tell this new story. Episode 2 is titled Camera Shy, and it starts with the introduction of a new serial killer who goes around decapitating Uber drivers, cuts to Dexter who visits Harrison's crime scene and tries to spot any mistakes. He finds the room where the man was killed and hides from some detectives and listens in on their conversation. When they leave, he realizes that Harrison must have taken the body somewhere else to chop it up, which leads him to the hotel's kitchen. He waits for all the employees to clock out and then sneaks in, searches the area, where he then sees a single drop of blood on the ceiling and carefully removes it. Dexter goes outside to find his car has been towed and sent to an impound, which makes him call an Uber. His Uber driver tells him about this killer, which obviously sparks his interest. The part that gets Dexter the most though is that the killer is nicknamed the Dark Passenger, which makes him mad, which is honestly kind of funny but also kind of cringe. Dexter proceeds to become an Uber driver to find this killer, and Harry questions his priorities since Dexter should be there to reunite with Harrison to protect him. Dexter says that he is protecting Harrison Harrison by keeping his distance but still watching over him. Honestly, after how New Blood ended, it makes sense that Dexter would be kind of scared to confront Harrison and fear that Harrison might hate him even more now. But I don't think that will be the case. I think Harrison will be relieved to know Dexter's alive, still trying to protect him. And if he doesn't have that reaction, then the writers are just repeating exactly what people hated about Harrison in New Blood. And I think they're smart enough to have learned from their mistakes. I forgot to mention this because both scenes were really short, but they're obviously setting up something for the bigger story coming later. We see Uma Thurman's character Charlie searching someone's apartment, finding their serial killer trophies, and then leaving an envelope for them, which is enough to intrigue the audience but doesn't give anything away. So we know Peter Dinklage's character is obsessed with serial killers, so I'm wondering if he pays killers to give them their trophies from their victims, which has me curious. How does this guy kind of find out about Dexter? We know that Dexter is going to kill this Uber driver killer. It was in the trailer, but Dexter stopped taking trophies. But maybe I'm thinking maybe they'll find him because of the guy Harrison killed. Either way, this has piqued my interest. The last thing we see is Dexter tracking down the killer and stalking him. Dexter follows him, sneaks a picture of him to confirm it's him, because the killer has a special hoodie that blocks his face from cameras, so things like dash cams can't see him when he kills people. I don't know if that technology actually exists, but I'm sure it does. It's not that crazy. While Dexter's chasing this guy, Harry warns Dexter, but he doesn't listen, telling him he's done this 100 times and knows what he's doing. Dexter's age, mixed with the fact that he suffered from a gunshot, catches up with him and the guy gets away. Dexter's obviously upset. Harry tells him that by chasing this guy and not letting him get into an Uber, he saved someone's life, even if it meant letting the killer get away. Harry says this is something Dexter's never done before, which I don't think that's true. I feel like he's done that a lot, but maybe not in this specific way. I'm not sure. Either way, it's definitely an interesting way to take the character of Dexter, and I'm all here for it. I can see that they're going to try to make Dexter as sympathetic as possible and maybe as heroic as possible versus what I joked about before, where I suggested they should make him a lot darker like in the books. Dexter is the hero and you gotta be able to root for him. Episode 3 is titled Backseat Driver. To be honest, not much happens in this episode. It's a lot of slow setup to get the main storylines of the season. A lot of the episodes, Dexter trying to track down the dark passenger. Dexter ends up finding his apartment, breaking in, finding his trophies, proving his guilt. While this is happening, Harrison's being interrogated for the murder that he committed. I would just like to say that Harrison is a horrible liar. Bro looks guilty as hell. But I think that's the point, because Harrison does truly feel guilty about what he did. The detective lady, I literally have no idea what her name is, has pretty much gotten down to a T what took place, but isn't fully sure who is responsible. She confronts Harrison with everything she's figured out. As a last-ditch effort to not look guilty, he confesses that he lives at the hotel because he's homeless. The police are taken aback at first, but once they find out he's telling the truth, they back off and let him leave. We then see Batista, who has returned back to Miami and is sitting at a bar reminiscing on the days where Dexter was around. And then all of a sudden, Quinn and Masuka show up, which is great. Is it cheesy fan service? 100%. But I love it because they're huge staples of the original show, and I think we as an audience kind of deserve to see them again and see what they have been up to. Quinn and Masuka question Batista about why he's retiring and make a few jokes making fun of him. Batista tells them that he has something he can't let go of and he needs to resolve. He doesn't tell them what it is, but that when it goes down, they'll understand. Honestly, after this scene, I really want to see Batista win against Dexter. I just feel bad for him and he deserves closure. I think all this is heading towards Dexter giving himself up to Batista in order to save Harrison, but I don't know how they would do that without repeating the events of New Blood, and I don't think Batista should die, but I don't know how else Dexter would win. It's either Batista dies for his cause or he catches Dexter. That's it. If Batista just stops pursuing Dexter, then that's just bad writing, honestly. The episode ends with Dexter successfully killing the dark passenger. Dexter learns about the invitation to the dinner party, decides he's gonna go, but as the dark passenger and not himself. Episode 4 is titled Call Me Red. We see Dexter assume the identity of the dark passenger and take his thumb so he'll be able to bypass security at the dinner party. I don't know if this method would actually work in real life, but whatever. It's kind of cool. We see Dexter get picked up by Uma Thurman's character Charlie. She makes a joke about him sitting in the back seat, tells him to sit his ass on the passenger seat, which is really funny. Dexter's taken to a mysterious mansion where he meets Peter Dinklage's character Leon Prater, who is a billionaire with an autistic obsession for serial killers. Leon gives Dexter the grand tour before taking him to his serial killer collection room where he has memorabilia and trophies from almost every famous serial killer ever. It starts off with real killers such as John Wayne Gacy's killer clown outfit, Jeffrey Dahmer's fridge, and a car seat that Ted Bundy used, and some lesser known other real life serial killers. And then Leon transitions to talking about in-universe serial killers, starting with the Trinity Killer. Leon owns the hammer that Trinity used to kill people with, which I believe Dexter actually killed him with. Leon makes a remark saying, "Did you know that he actually killed in fours?" And Dexter says, "You don't say." And then we see the table that Dexter killed his brother on, the Ice Truck Killer. Leon says that maybe if the Ice Truck Killer had someone like Dexter to talk to, he might still be alive. Dexter makes a really funny reply in his head. He simply says,
Doubtful.
which is exactly the type of dark ironic humor I love Dexter for. more. And then the last thing Leon shows Dexter is none other than the Bay Harbor Butcher's blood slides. We see on Dexter's face that he's very impressed that Leon was able to get all of these. We see Dexter meet the other killers that will be attending the dinner party, the first being played by Christian Ritter, Mia, who is known as the killer named Lady Vengeance. Dexter becomes very interested in her because she seemingly has her own code where she only kills sexual predators. The next killer we meet is played by Eric Stonestreet, Al, who is known as the serial killer named Rapunzel because he takes women's ponytails as trophies. He seems like a normal guy who even has a wife and kids, which immediately makes Dexter admire him, which is kind of what we saw in season 4 with the Trinity Killer, and we all know how that ended. The next killer we meet is played by Neil Patrick Harris, Lowell, who is known as the Tattoo Collector, which is pretty self-explanatory, I think. The final killer we meet is played by David Dalsmachian, Gareth, who is known as the Gemini Killer. We don't get to know him at all, but I think we will get to in a later episode. Everyone gathers for the dinner part of the party. This is where a really funny gag happens where Dexter's looking around at all this amazing food, and then before he can dig in, Leon brings him some vegan cauliflower, which upsets Dexter because Dexter didn't know that Red was a vegan, so he's just like, great, thanks. Lowell gets up in front of everyone, gives a presentation on his process of killing, and shows out the next person he's gonna kill, which of course makes him rise to the top of Dexter's list. The next day, we see Dexter sitting in his car, starts to make plans to take out Lowell, starts to hesitate a little bit. Harry appears and tells Dexter that these people are not his friends, they're killers that need to be put down. If he wants real connection, it's gonna have to be with Harrison, which at this point Dexter is still resistant to reuniting with Harrison, for valid reasons. Dexter goes on a run with Mia and learns her origin story. She basically had a stepdad who was sexually assaulting her and her little sister, and she ended up killing him and running away. This makes Dexter more into her because now he's fully convinced that she's like him, in the way that they both have a code. After that, Dexter meets up with Lowell at a bar, where Lowell thinks Dexter is just there to watch his process because he's intrigued, but little does he know Dexter's there to kill him. Dexter waits for Lowell to go after his target and then follows him behind and nabs him. Dexter sets up Lowell in a kill room that's in a closed tattoo shop, beautifully ironic, I would say. Lowell wakes up and immediately knows what's going on. He's not scared of begging, he's just kind of disappointed. He also calls Dexter ballsy for breaking the dinner party rules on the first day. Dexter pretty much announces to the audience that he's going back to collecting trophies, and Lowell mocks him, calling his trophies lame. Dexter reveals that he is in fact not the Dark Passenger and that he's the Bay Harbor Butcher, which makes Lowell have a sudden realization and scream, but before he can say anything, he gets stabbed by Dexter. Dexter dumps his body in the same place he dumped Red, some kind of abandoned factory. The last scene of this episode is absolutely insane. We cut back to Harrison at the Empire Hotel. Batista has tracked him down and starts interrogating him about killing the guy at the hotel and trying to get Harrison to admit that his dad is a killer. Harrison obviously denies everything, even the part about Dexter. Batista tells Harrison that he truly hopes he doesn't become like his dad, otherwise he's going down a very dark path that no one can come back from, which honestly sounds very genuine. Harrison leaves and we see him the next day walking down the streets in New York City, just feeling extremely guilty about the murder. He tries to go turn himself into the police, but Dexter stops him by placing his hand on his shoulder. And the episode ends on that insane cliffhanger. Fucking crazy episode, and by far one of the best episodes of Dexter I've ever seen. This episode sets up so many plot lines and stories, so I'm just hoping that the rest of the show can keep that going and not rush every plot and make a very satisfying ending to all of them. The creators of the show have been talking about how they have plans for seasons 2 and 3, so I feel like at least one thing is going to be left on a cliffhanger, and I have a feeling it's going to be the plot with Batista. The whole serial killer dinner party plot probably won't carry over to another season. Episode 5 is titled Murder Horny. The episode opens with Dexter taking Harrison back to his apartment and trying to explain everything to him. Dexter explains how he survived the gunshot wound, and Harrison tells him he's like a killer in a horror movie that just keeps coming back. And at Dexter's head, he just says, there are some similarities, which is so funny to me. Dexter tells Harrison that he knows about the man he murdered, and that he was the same way when he was his age. All he wanted to do was kill when he came across someone as awful as the man Harrison killed, and the show actually shows the scene in Original Sin where Dexter saves Deb from being sexually assaulted at a party. Harrison says that he is not like Dexter, he feels extremely guilty about killing someone and that he never wants to do it again. Dexter is both disappointed and relieved that Harrison isn't like him and doesn't want to be like him. Harrison tells Dexter that Batista is basically fully after both of them and knows the truth about Dexter. Dexter takes the watch that Harrison had been carrying around from the guy he murdered. We can see that visibly makes Harrison feel a little better, but he still needs to process everything, so he sees himself out and leaves. Then we see a very interesting scene that I was going to skip over, but maybe it has some importance later on. Leon Prater is being interviewed by some lady and basically strokes his own ego, talking about how he donates to orphanages because he was one and how he is a self-made billionaire. I don't know if these things are true or if he just desperately wants the public to love him to further stroke his ego and narcissism. We then see Dexter and Mia go on a date at a bowling alley and get to know each other a little more. At the end of the date, Mia asks Dexter to join him for a kill, which absolutely shocks Dexter and makes him unsure what to do. After some consideration, Dexter goes on a date with Mia at a bar, and through conversation learns that she does in fact not have a code like him, which makes him extremely disappointed and feel like he's been doing all this for nothing. He considers just taking her out right then and there, but thinks of a different plan. He rejects her offer to do a double kill, so she goes on the hunt for a kill by herself. We see Dexter standing outside her apartment, and where he anonymously reports her to the police and uses a really funny fake New York accent.
There's a guy screaming next door. I think some chick's trying to murder him. I heard her call herself Lady Vengeance or some shit. You gotta send help.
Sir, try and stay calm.
Stay calm my ass. The guy's in fucking trouble. It's fucking Lady Vengeance.
The police burst into her house and arrest her. While searching her trophies, we see that Dexter planted the watch on the man Harrison killed, therefore making Mia guilty of his murder and making Harrison look innocent. I like the line where Dexter says, even if Harrison doesn't want me in his life, I want to make sure he'll at least have a life. And I think that really says everything you need to know about Dexter in terms of how he truly feels about his son. There's a quick scene where Batista sees that Mia has been framed for Harrison's murder, and he immediately knows it's bullshit, and we can pretty much tell he's gonna do something about it to prove it wrong. The last scene of the episode is Dexter and Harrison finally sitting down and having a genuine conversation and rekindling their relationship. Dexter brings up Rita and basically tells Harrison that the truth about how she died, takes full responsibility for it. Harrison kind of sighs in relief and that Dexter has finally admitted what happened to his mother. Dexter tells Harrison that he's glad he isn't a killer like him and he doesn't want him to be one, but that he does want Harrison in his life and to be a family again. Honestly, a really wholesome and needed scene in the show. A lot of people hated Harrison in New Blood for very valid reasons, but this show has done a perfect job at fixing his character. The very last scene of the episode is Charlie visiting Mia in prison, and she tells her, we'll make sure your stay in here is as short and comfortable as possible, which is extremely threatening. Overall, a meh episode, not much happens until the end. I think Mia's character could have gone a little longer in the show and could have had more of a relationship with Dexter, making her reveal more gut punching and making you feel worse. Episode 6 is titled Cats and Mouse. We see that Prater and Charlie have figured out that no one's been to Red's apartment in weeks, and they call him out about it. He says that he changed apartments and jobs because he prefers his anonymity, which Prater believes. Prater tells Dexter to meet him at his place, and then we cut to the detectives questioning the guy who's going to be killed by Mia, and he tells them that Mia told him that he was going to be her first kill in New York City, which of course makes the detectives puzzled because Ryan Foster, the guy Harrison killed, would have had to have been her first kill if she actually did the crime. Batista walks in and pitches his theory to the detectives that Dexter is a notorious killer, taught Harrison how to kill, and then Dexter covered up his murder. The detectives think he's a little crazy, but they're willing to entertain his theory. To be fair, it does sound insane even though us as the audience know he's 100% correct. Batista even compares the Bay Harbor Butcher case to the New York Ripper case, which is not the first time that has been mentioned. The New York Ripper has been mentioned every episode and described as New York City's worst ever killer that got away and disappeared, so fans think someone in the story is going to be revealed as the New York Ripper by the end of the show. I fully think it's going to be Peter Dinklage because it would make logical sense. Not only does he have an obsession with serial killers, but he literally owns the Ripper's murder weapon in his trophy room. It's possible he could have just bought it from the police evidence, but it would make sense if he owned it beforehand and is a retired killer now.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory.
The show cuts back to Dexter, who meets Prater, Al, and Gareth back at the place they had the dinner party. Gareth gets upset because he thinks Mia's gonna snitch on him to get herself a deal because he's apparently such a big deal. He calls himself the FBI's #1 most wanted and how he's famous and getting his own Hollywood movie. Dexter's reaction is fucking hilarious. He just stares at him and goes, I mean, really? Dexter's over here like, get a load of this fucking guy. After the meeting, Dexter follows Gareth into a bookstore where he pulls out a book about serial killers and leaves a bookmark at the Gemini killer part of it. Dexter flips through the book and finds himself the Bay Harbor Butcher. The book basically calls him a hero, which seemingly makes Dexter happy. But of course in the book, Dokes is the butcher, so he gets all the credit for being a supposed hero. Dexter goes home and finds Gareth sitting there waiting for him. Dexter plays it off that he's a big fan of the Gemini killer and was starstruck but wanted to know more about him, which totally feeds Gareth's ego and makes him be like, oh Oh yeah, of course. Everyone loves me, so this was bound to happen at some point. Dexter asks Gareth why he kills in twos and who he left the note for. Gareth explains that it's more poetic and meaningful to kill in twos and that he left the note for himself, which is very cryptic, but it'll eventually make sense. Dexter offers him a drink and secretly squirts M99 into it to knock him out. When Dexter sits the drinks down, Gareth switches them because he doesn't trust Dexter. As a viewer, you think, shit, how is Dexter gonna get out of this one? But Dexter actually expected him to do that, which, you know, a little plot convenient, but it makes Dexter look smart. So Gareth drinks the one with the M99, falls over, knocked out. Dexter basically speed runs a kill room, quickly gets rid of Gareth without even letting him speak. I had 3 notes about this scene. It feels very sloppy and risky, but I kind of like that. Secondly, I love how they remade the iconic blood theme from the original show. Sounds so much more dramatic now. Thirdly, I really hated how they got rid of Gareth so fast, as he was a character I was most excited to see in the entire show. But if you've seen the episode, then you already know where I'm going with this. But before I talk about the ending, there are 2 quick scenes towards the end that I want to talk about. First one is Batista and the detectives going to interrogate Mia and question her about Dexter, but when they get there they find her dead in her cell. I think maybe that's a missed opportunity. I think it would have made for a very intense scene if Batista got to question her about Dexter at least, and then maybe after that she gets killed. At least something like that. But hey, I get it. They gotta drag out this Batista story to make it more dramatic and last longer. The second scene is between Dexter and Harrison at a diner where Harrison admits he almost tried to kill someone but stopped himself. Dexter tells him that he should be proud of that and that he's like Deborah in that way. Deborah had a strong sense of right and wrong, but also had strong impulses to basically hurt people. Dexter tells Harrison that he's been given a second chance and that he should do something good with it and find his own path. I like seeing them having a good relationship, and I'm sure everyone agrees. No one wants a repeat of New Blood. We then see Charlie call Dexter and tell him to meet him at a helipad for a surprise. Dexter arrives and the only person who shows up is Al, because Dexter has gotten rid of everyone else, or so we thought. At the last minute, a car shows up and none other than Gareth gets out and gets on the helicopter. And that's when both the audience and Dexter realize that it isn't the Gemini killer, it's the Gemini killers, plural, identical twins. Boom. Crazy ass plot twist. Dexter's reaction to this had me dying laughing because he just stares at the camera and goes,
"Fuck me."
I wasn't sure how I felt about this plot twist at first, but after thinking about it for a while, I absolutely love it. It reminds me of the plot twist with the Doomsday Killer, where Dexter thought it was 2 killers, but it was actually one who was just schizophrenic. This is basically the opposite of that, which is awesome. It's crazy how long this show's been going on, and they still can think of new things to do like this. It honestly just further proves that this show is a great idea, and not just Dexter being milked for money. But both can be true, I suppose. I'm excited to see this Gemini killer twin and how different he is from the other one. It's also possible that maybe he's suspicious of Dexter, and then when he realizes his brother is gone, he's definitely gonna know Dexter is responsible. There's just so much intrigue and possibilities that this plot twist has opened up for the next episode. Episode 7 is called Course Correction. We see Dexter, Gareth, Al, Prater, and Charlie go to some sort of island resort. They toasted Mia's death, quote-unquote death, which Dexter knows is bullshit. Prater tells Dexter that he needs to do a show and tell after Al, which makes him panic a little bit. For Al's presentation, he basically shows off GoPro footage of him killing a girl in a park, which just disgusts Dexter and makes him want to kill Al even more. Dexter goes into a little room to try and prepare for his presentation. After thinking of a few different ways to act and pretend, he decides for his presentation he's just gonna be completely honest and vulnerable. He goes in front of everyone and gives this genuine speech about how the Dark Passenger is his real self and is always in control, and his mask is the human side of him. His speech is very reminiscent of his speech in season 2, I believe it is, where he talks about his mask slipping and how exhausting it is to try and act like a normal person. His speech is so good that Prater actually ends up getting emotional. After the speech, Prater asks to talk to Dexter in private, where he reveals where his obsession with serial killers comes from. He explains that a serial killer killed his parents in a drunk driving incident. Prater would often visit him in prison better to understand why he did it, and eventually got to a point where he related to the killer in a sick way and kind of sympathized with him. When the killer passed away, he decided to start seeking out other killers to learn about them and get to understand why they do what they do. Dexter's face is really complex here. I can't tell if Prater's speech makes Dexter like him, it makes him not want to kill him, or what, but it's definitely interesting. This next scene, I have a lot of notes for it that I want to talk about. Dexter sits next to Gareth on a bench and starts a friendly conversation. Dexter reveals that he knows Gareth is a twin and quickly turns the conversation menacing, starts telling Gareth in detail how he killed his twin, which makes Gareth get mad and attack Dexter, makes it look like self-defense in front of everyone else. On one hand, I really love this scene because it shows how fucking ballsy Dexter is, where he's just killing someone in broad daylight in front of other people. On the other hand, I wanted to see Gareth a little more. Dexter told the others that Gareth told him he killed Lowell and was gonna kill the rest of them, and I think he could have gotten away with it a little more if he had killed Al first and then the episode after killed Gareth. So that's a little disappointing. Also, we never even learned what the other twin's name is, but whatever. I can forgive all of this because I love the story and where all of this is heading. The interesting thing about this scene is that Charlie's super suspicious of Dexter, and I could tell she's going to be the first one to figure out he's not actually red. Honestly, hope she teams up with Dexter to take out Prater because it's so obvious she fucking hates him and hates working for him. I think that'd be a really fun and interesting twist for the show to do. We see Harrison tour college specifically for criminology. Dexter joins him late for a class that they get to sit in and listen to, and none other than the main detective lady is giving a presentation on the New York Ripper, and we finally get more clues about who he is. We know he's been killing for a long time, but he recently quit and now just torments the loved ones of his victims. We hear his voice, but it does sound altered, so there's no telling if that's his real voice or not. And we obviously know his murder weapon because we previously saw it. At the end of the class, the detective pulls Dexter and Harrison aside to talk to them. Harrison tells the detective that her actions when trying to get justice for the victims of Lady Vengeance really inspired him to become a cop or even a detective. The detective tells Dexter that Batista is looking for him, and Dexter tries to basically gaslight the detective into thinking that Batista is a whack job and is insane. When Dexter gets home, he finds Batista there waiting for him. Dexter offers to drive Batista back to where he's staying, and their conversation in the car is one of the most intense scenes I've ever seen in Dexter. Dexter warns Angel, tells him to stay away from him and Harrison, and Angel tells him he's not going to back off because he knows what he did to Dokes and LaGuerta. Dexter tells Angel that if he's who Angel thinks he is, it can't possibly end well for him, which is an insane threat. Angel just smirks and says he'll take his chances. Dexter kicks him out of the car, stranding him in the street, but then we see that Angel put his AirPods in Dexter's car, which have built-in tracker features on them, and then the episode ends. An absolutely insane scene. I was genuinely on the edge of my seat watching it. This really reminded me of the scene in Breaking Bad where Hank figures out Walt is Heisenberg and confronts him in the garage. Another thing I love about Resurrection is that Dexter is just ballsy as shit this season. Bro does not give a single fuck anymore, and I'm all here for it. Episode 8 is titled The Kill Room Where It Happens. A very funny wordplay on the famous song from the musical Hamilton. Dexter calls Al and tries to plan a meetup with him so he can kill him. Al tells him to meet him at some restaurant after his showing of Hamilton, which makes the title make sense. We see Charlie tell Prater that something is wrong with Red. He's the reason everything's gone to shit recently. Prater just insults Charlie and tells her she's wrong. I don't know how to feel about that because yes, he's an egomaniac and narcissist, so he's gonna trust his own opinion rather than Charlie's, especially someone he feels he has a special personal connection to. But then again, her literal job is to keep him safe, so why the fuck would she lie about that? I guess you could just say he's in denial, which seems like the obvious answer. Dexter goes to pick up Al from the theater, and he finds out that Al left early because he hated the musical and just started driving home to Wisconsin, which is pretty based, honestly. I don't like Hamilton either, except for 2 songs. This obviously pisses off Dexter, and his urge to kill is pretty out of control for one of the first times in a while. I've been skipping this because it hasn't been important until now, but there's a plot going on between Harrison and his friend's landlord. The landlord is a piece of shit, and that's basically all you need to know. Harrison had told Dexter that he's been getting worse and worse, and Dexter told Harrison he was gonna give him a piece of his mind. Dexter waits for the landlord to leave his office and then kidnaps him in an alleyway. Dexter brings him to a closed wig place, the kill room where he was gonna kill Al. He scares the shit out of the landlord, and while that's going on, Dexter hears Batista break into the room, so he frees the landlord and runs out the back and drives away. Batista called the 2 detectives to the scene of the crime, and he tries to tell them what happened, but they don't believe him at all. The detectives go back to the police department where we see Wallace call Quinn, who has now become lieutenant at Miami Metro. Quinn tells Wallace that Batista is retired and is no longer an official officer of the law and is acting on his own accord. The episode ends with Prater confronting Dexter at a restaurant and seeing Harrison there with him. We see Charlie do this little cocky-ass smirk because she knew Dexter was hiding something, and now Prater believes her and they're fully on to him. Overall, a pretty filler episode, I think, just a lot of setup for the final 2 episodes, not really much to talk about here. Episode 9 is titled Touched by an Angel, which is a pretty terrifying title that I really wish wasn't public knowledge before this came out, but nevertheless, the episode opens with Harrison absolutely nerding out about Dexter being friends with Prater since he's a celebrity. Dexter tells Prater to meet him outside and he tells him that he'll do anything he wants, just leave Harrison alone. Prater tells Dexter that he wants to set up a meeting at his mansion, talk about everything there is to know about Dexter, and in return, he'll leave Harrison alone. Dexter agrees and runs back inside and grabs Harrison to leave. Dexter basically gives Harrison the rundown on the serial killer dinner party that he absolutely annihilated, making Prater and Charlie sus of him. The funny part of this whole conversation is that Harrison is completely unbothered until Dexter tells him that he took out the infamous Gemini killer, which impresses Harrison. And of course, Dexter flexes even more, saying the Gemini killer's twins. I really like this cocky give no shits version of Dexter, where he's just like, yeah, I killed those fucking posers because I'm the baddest bitch in town. I love it. Harrison goes back to the Empire Hotel to greet Charlie, who basically interrogates him. The scene is cool because it's shown in retrospect. Harrison is on the roof after it already happened and is explaining it to Dexter on the phone. Dexter gets pissed off that Charlie is after Harrison when he literally just told Prater that Harrison's off limits. Dexter finds out where Charlie lives and breaks in. He finds out that Charlie was a decorated veteran who served her country, as well as that Charlie's mother is bedridden from some sort of terminal illness and has in-house care. Dexter takes note of this and finds Charlie's car and waits on the back seat for her. Charlie gets in and Dexter uses a strangulation weapon on her to keep her in place. Uma Thurman's acting here is really good. She breaks down crying because Dexter threatens her mom. Charlie tells him that she is indebted to Prater and he's the reason she's lived for so long. So if he dies, her mom probably dies too. Dexter tells her that if she ever comes near his son again, her mom is being paid a visit, and he gets out and runs away. We then see Batista talking to the detectives at the police station and they tell him that they called Quinn, who told him that he's retired and no longer a working officer of the law, which means everything he's been doing has been very illegal. They ask him to surrender his badge and Batista angrily lets out this is exactly what Dexter does and is very good at, but he realizes that the detectives don't care, so he reluctantly turns in his shield and leaves. We then see Charlie report back to Prater and tell him what happened, but he doesn't give a single shit about her well-being. He just geeks out about her surviving an encounter with a serial killer. The show cuts back to Batista, who'd been spying on Dexter and Prater. He barges into Prater's office and demands to see him, telling his security that he's in danger. Charlie takes Batista to Prater, shows him the picture he took of him and Dexter, and tells him who Dexter really is. Charlie gives Prater a sorta told you so look, and then the show cuts back to Dexter. He barges into the mansion and Prater greets him before leading him into the vault. Charlie puts a gun on him and takes his knife away. Prater tells Dexter that he knows exactly who he is and he fucking loves it. He giggles like a little schoolgirl and starts fanboying out, as we all pretty much assumed he would. And then of course, in a reveal, we see Angel behind Prater strapped to a table with tape over his mouth. Prater tells Dexter that he wants him to work for him. He'll lure serial killers from all over the globe here, have dinner parties, and that Dexter will take him out. But the price of admission is, of course, none other than having to kill Batista. At this moment, I knew it was so over for Batista. I knew there was no way out of this. Dexter honestly looks like he wants to accept his offer and generally would have if it weren't for Batista being there caught up in this situation. Dexter goes to Batista, raises a knife above him, and then last minute cuts him loose. Instead of Batista attacking the people that kidnapped him and tried to have him killed, he tunnel visions on Dexter and tackles him to the ground. Because, again, of course he does. Angel starts strangling Dexter and tells him this is for La Guerta and Dokes. Dexter actually stops resisting and accepts the fact that Angel's going to be the one to finally do him in. And in a not so shocking turn of events, Prater shoots Angel 5 times in the chest. Charlie grabs Prater and books it out of the room, and Dexter throws an axe at Charlie's hand, making her drop her gun. They close the vault on Dexter's face, but before it fully closes, Prater gives this genuinely psychotic wave to Dexter with a hilariously creepy face. Dexter runs back to Angel and he tells him that he did not kill La Guerta or Dokes.
It's your fault. Now I'm dying. Because of you, Dexter Morgan. Fuck you.
Man, this episode had me absolutely fucked up. In my last video, I said either Batista catches Dexter or he dies trying, and that's simply it. It can't go on forever and be dragged out a long time, although I was somewhat convinced it would at least go until season 2. I feel like Angel's death was too obvious and had too much setup to be shock value, which makes me think that there must be a reason for this. Is it to make Dexter psycho and break his code? Is he gonna feel guilty and turn himself into Miami Metro? I think there's so many different ways this can affect Dexter as a character, and I think that's very interesting and exciting. On the other side of it, if this show is going until at least 3rd season to wrap everything up, is it gonna feel like Batista was killed off too soon? Kinda like how people feel about Dokes in season 2. I guess it really just depends on what happens in the finale and the next season to really be able to answer that question. Episode 10 is titled And Justice for All. The episode opens with Dexter covering up Angel's body and saying goodbye to him. And then instead of hearing Harry, the camera pans behind Dexter and shows none other than his brother, Brian. Which is totally fan service, but this kinda makes sense. There are a few times in the main show where someone really close to Dexter died and he would feel lost and look to Brian for comfort, basically. Brian was my favorite character on the original show, so I was really happy to see him. Brian mocks Dexter for feeling sad for Angel when Angel thought Dexter was his friend for 20 years and then spent another 10 mourning his death just to find out he's a serial killer. And I mean, Brian has a point. Angel's death is completely Dexter's fault, and him mourning Angel is pathetic. Dexter gets pissed off and throws an object at Brian to make him disappear. Dexter uses Batista's phone to call Harrison and tells him to become a server at Prater's Gala so he can get Dexter out of the vault. Dexter leads Harrison through the gala upstairs to Prater's penthouse, but Charlie catches him. Dexter informs Charlie that he found secret files on all the killers associated with Prater, including blackmail on Charlie. Dexter tries to negotiate for him and Harrison's freedom, but Charlie ain't having it. She tells Dexter that she lets Harrison go and leaves him in the vault, or else she's gonna kill Harrison if the files get out. Dexter reluctantly agrees and then tries to figure out what the code to the door could be. He finds files on the man that killed Prater's parents and finds 2 8-digit codes. One is the date that Prater's family was killed, the other was the killer's inmate number. Dexter says fuck it and decides to go with the inmate code. Batista's phone dies right after Dexter tells Harrison the code, but luckily ends up being the correct one. So the door opens and Dexter bear hugs Harrison, which is very cute. We see Charlie storm up to Prater and she tells him to suck her big fat dick. Okay, well, she doesn't quite say it like that. She tells him that she quits and is gonna walk away, otherwise information is gonna get out about both of them and they both go down together. And then Charlie just straight up leaves. Pretty satisfying seeing that Prater totally had coming, especially with everything we found out about Charlie last episode. I always felt like it would have been bullshit for Dexter to kill her for doing her job, but also quickly understood she would never help Dexter because she hates serial killers. So her story ending this way makes perfect sense. Dexter grabs a bunch of shit out of the vault and tells Harrison to meet him outside. Harrison runs to one of the side exits of the building, but of course, Prater sees him and holds a gun to him. Prater takes Harrison back to the vault and calls Dexter on the phone and tells him to meet him in the vault. Dexter gets super infuriated and a cool needle drop plays. As Dexter's running through Prater's mansion, he briefly sees Harry, who just simply says, "Get that fucker," which had me dying laughing. I was totally with him there. I was like, hell yeah, Harry, fuck him up. Dexter goes to the vault to see Prater holding Harrison at gunpoint. Prater basically thanks Dexter for pushing himself to kill for the very first time and how exhilarating it feels. If this dude didn't fit the code before, he definitely does now, especially after what he did to Angel. Dexter convinces Prater to try to kill Dexter first inside of Harrison, and then it's revealed that Dexter previously slipped Harrison some M99 at the end of the last episode, which is fucking awesome. Harrison gets Prater with M99 and then Dexter takes over for him. I think one of the most fun parts of the entire show of Dexter is watching him try to outsmart people that you'd think would absolutely fuck him up. The scene everybody's been waiting for finally happens. Dexter has Prater on a skill table and absolutely fucking mocks his ass. Prater tells Dexter that all of this could have been avoided if he had just killed Angel, and Dexter tells Prater that's exactly it. He has a code that he lives by, and Prater's immediate reaction is just, psh, a serial killer with morals. Yeah, okay, buddy. Dexter explains that at first he really thought the members of the dinner party could be his friends, but he soon realized they had to go because of how awful they were. And once again, the show emphasizes how there truly is no one exactly like Dexter, and that's just a sad fact he has to live with. Your path is a lonely one, my friend, as Miguel perfectly said in episode 1. Dexter tells Prater that his father had a strong sense of justice that runs in the family, which is what made him create the code. And I think the way he says it is perfect because Harrison, Deborah, Dexter, and Harry were all the exact same. They all just enacted their justice in different ways. Dexter tells Prater that his blood slide box is for victims he wants to remember and Prater is someone he wants to forget, which is just an absolutely badass final thing to say to his face. Dexter kills him and then quickly cleans up the crime scene. On his way out, he says goodbye to Angel's body, which totally had me fucked up. I would have been even more depressed if the body was just left there, but as a final fuck you to Prater, Dexter sets off the alarm, alerting every cop in the gala to the vault. Wallace and her partner search the place where they find Batista's body and some files on the other known killers. And of course, the main file they find is on none other than the New York Ripper. And obviously they found the Ripper's weapon, but we already knew that was in the vault. At the end of the episode, we see that Dexter has stolen Prater's yacht. We also see that he stole files on serial killers who are still out there roaming around, giving a little tease to show that either he's going to keep killing off screen, or those are going to be the killers we're going to see in season 2. Dexter starts giving a voiceover talking about how he finally feels good about who he is. He tried to be normal once, but now he knows that he can never be. He is who he is. He also says that he's grateful to at least have Harrison, someone he can count on and lean on when times get tough, like he used to have with Harry and Deb. I really like Dexter's last words here, where he basically breaks the fourth wall talking to the audience.
I'm Dexter Morgan. I'm exactly who I need to be. Exactly who you want me to be.
Overall, a great episode and just a banger season in general. Definitely a top 3 Dexter season for me. My only issue so far is that there are 3 things that are kind of unresolved. 1, we never figure out who the New York Ripper is. I mean, we hear his voice and see his name on the file, but that's it. No big reveal, no tease for him to be the next villain, nothing. Which isn't super disappointing as long as they follow it up in season 2. If the New York Ripper is never mentioned again after this, I'm gonna genuinely be upset. Secondly, Batista is dead and we never get to see Quinn or Masuko or Miami Metro receive that phone call, and I think that's pretty unsatisfying. They at least deserve to know, and we should see it. It shouldn't be off camera. So like I said before, as long as they follow it up in season 2, that's all good. Thirdly, there was a lot of screen time given to Blessing and his family for like genuinely no reason. It led to nothing, and Blessing and his family are not interesting at all. I think the point was just to show that Dexter is human and has feelings and can still fit in with society, but we pretty much explore all those exact same themes with Harrison, so it just felt a little unnecessary. But yeah, other than those 3 things, this season was amazing. Peter Dinklage really carried the show in terms of great acting. He's definitely one of the best actors to ever be on Dexter, without a doubt. And obviously, you can't forget Michael C. Hall as Dexter, who after all these years is still finding new and interesting ways to play and portray Dexter as a character. With all that being said, let me know what you guys thought about Dexter Resurrection Season 1 in the comments. Goodbye.